Hey guys, today on the Leadership to Wealth podcast, we've got a great guest. You need to take notes today. He is a two-time Wall Street best-selling author. He's created and co-created several successful companies in multiple industries. And when I'm talking, he's made money, I'm talking $500 million with these businesses, and he's currently growing a chain of restaurants, as well as he has a lot of commercial real estate. We're going to get into things like, what are the questions that people don't even know that they need to ask? On today's show, Brian Will. Brian, welcome to the show.
Neil, thank you for having me on the Leadership to Wealth podcast. I'm excited to be here today. This is going to be fun. I've been listening to some of your other podcasts, so I was excited to jump on here and throw my 2 cents in.
Oh, I love it. Love it. Well, I'm sure you can throw more than 2 cents in on this conversation. So after building several businesses, I think one of the things, sometimes we see people that are up and coming and they can share about their part of the journey. You've done this over and over and over again, and you've done it at a high level. You continue to share on your social media, through your sales training companies, and that you continue to try to help people build businesses, right? So I think you're going to be able to shed a different light into this topic of leadership, of building wealth, building companies, making money, all of that.
I hope so. I mean, it's funny. I've had a friend of mine who he's bounced through different Fortune 500 companies, and he has hired me back several times to do stuff. And he always says, you just rubber stamp what you do and you just bring it to the next deal and then bring it to the next deal. And I said, that's actually how sales management and leadership works. You find what works, you rubber stamp it, and you can pretty much work within almost any industry doing that.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that we're going to be able to maybe answer or identify some of the questions that people don't ask about creating wealth, or maybe they don't even know to ask in doing that, because I think that there is an issue when it comes to people really knowing, what am I trying to build? Oftentimes people get into it with a pain point and they're running from something. Well, maybe they're running from bills, maybe they're running from failure, right up behind you on the wall. They're trying to run away from something, and we don't always have a clear idea of what we're running to. And so we don't know those questions to ask. Now, just before we get into that stuff, let me start off with something like, when you were growing up, what was your dream? What did you want to do growing up? What was your ideas around that?
Yeah, so my answer might not be what you expect, because I grew up I had a rough childhood, grew up in an abusive home, did not have the best, or quite frankly, any examples growing up of business, family, love, relationships, nothing. So my motivation was not a positive motivation, and I can get into this a little deeper, but mine was a negative motivation when I was growing up. My motivation was, I don't ever want to be like this, live in this type of environment, or have to go through these types of things ever again for the rest of my life. So you talk about running away from something. I was running away from my life when I went into my journey into business and becoming a better person and whatnot.
Yeah. Can you say more about that? Obviously everyone may come from a different place,
Sure.
what it is that's happening. But what was that when you were like, you're running away from that, running away from your life? What did that look like? What did that taste like that drove you? I've heard you say that there was anger there.
Yeah.
When
you're young and you're in an abusive type of home situation, and I'm talking all kinds of abuse we won't get into. Yeah. But I tend to find that people go down one of three paths when they've had a background like mine. The first path is, we call this the abused becomes the abuser. Okay. The second one is that the abuse destroys them mentally, and they become a worthless individual, and they never accomplish or do anything in life because they can never overcome that trauma. The third, and you see this, and you might be surprised how many actors, musicians, CEOs, entrepreneurs have come from this type of background, and they use that trauma as fuel to power them through all the BS. Can I say bullshit on your podcast?
Yeah,
All the
absolutely.
bullshit that you're going to have to go to be successful and build a company. And trust me, there's going to be a lot, because the wheels are going to
Yeah.
come off the bus more times than you want. But they use it as fuel, which is what I did. That anger, that motivation. I'm not going to be like that. I'm not going to be. When everybody tells you when you're young you're going to be a failure, when your father tells you that you're going to never amount to anything and you better learn to drive a truck, and all you can think of in your mind is, I will never, ever, ever live that life that you think. I'm a better person than this. I can do more. And so you use that as fuel to drive you through all the challenges that you're going to face in building a business. Because if you don't have a strong enough why and enough fuel, you will collapse when the first wheels come off of that bus. So you see that a lot in
Oh,
entrepreneurs.
oh yes, absolutely. Having come from a rough upbringing, I fit your first one, which was then I went into a gang. I was in a gang for a number of years, and then left that. And I think it was actually very helpful for me, to be honest with you, because I got to see what I didn't want.
Sure.
I got to see that road, but that was, the height of what I could imagine at that point in time. We're going back to my teenage years, but
You know what's
at
interesting
what
about it
point?
though, Neil? Let me throw
Yeah,
this in here.
yeah,
What's interesting about it is that a lot of times that anger or that trauma or that past that you're using as fuel. In my case, I used to say that I'm going to prove to the world that I am not the loser they said I was. I'm going to prove to my
right.
teachers who failed me out of high school, I failed out at 16. I'm going to prove to my parents who told me I would never amount to anything. I'm going to prove to the world by going out and succeeding. At some point, if you do succeed and you start into this self-realization aspect of becoming a better person, you suddenly realize that it was never the world that you were trying to prove that you were better to. It was your
Yes,
own self-image and self-doubts and
absolutely,
insecurities that you needed
absolutely.
to prove were wrong. And I went through counseling, and I've been divorced and do all that. And one of my counselors said, it's funny how many very, very successful people will come in and tell me, don't mess with my insecurities. They're what drive me forward.
Yes, I man, well, I've gone through a range of these,
You didn't
as
expect this today, did
absolutely.
you?
No, no, actually, I love it. I knew that we were going to get, the real deal with you coming on today and sharing this stuff. I knew that this was coming, um, and and I can say that I've been through a number of those
Hmm.
stages, and it took me almost a decade just to learn to sort of be with myself amongst people,
Hmm.
and that took something just to learn what was normal, eh, from where I came from.
Speaking
So
my language.
yeah.
I live my life in third party, right? And when I was till I was about 40 years old, I lived my life like I'm up on a balcony watching my life happen and watching the
Right,
interactions around me and
right.
reacting. Even while I would be talking, I'd be watching, from this third party view of what I was doing to see how it affected people around me.
Yeah.
So
When did it switch from? I know that you have the switch where you can turn on that anger anytime you want.
mhm,
That's always available to someone, right? Uh,
it's my anger
if
box.
if you know, you know.
Yes.
When did it switch for you where you were able to put that box down? And because you're a happy person, you're a joyful person, you've come to a different stage. When did that switch for you?
So if you can see what's on behind me, and I know you can, where it says
Yeah,
execute, failure, success. What's
yeah.
missing in there between failure and success should say learn, right? So, as I like to say, people use these cliche all the time that you have to fail to succeed, and that is a misnomer, and it makes me cringe because failure
Okay.
leads to failure, leads to failure. Learning from failure is what leads to success. And if you skip the learning part, it's those people in your life that have everything they touch, they just can't seem to make it work, and they just over and over, it's just not working for them. That's because they're not learning from their failure. So
Mm, yeah.
the switch happens in my life as I failed so many times over and over and over. But one thing I was always good at was, we call this post failure analysis. We also do post success analysis. And that didn't work. What did I do wrong? And what can I never do again? Right. My first book was, the original title was Starting Life at Zero. And I call it 100 lessons from where you are to where you want to be. Some people start at 50 because they've got money and background and connections and the right parents and the right friends. Some people
Right.
start at 10. I started at 0. So I had so many lessons I had to learn, but I was willing to push through using my little anger box to learn those lessons over and over and over and over and over and over. So it took me 20 years of learning. And at some point along the way, you go, okay, how I'm acting is not working. And if I can recognize that internally and change that, and if I can control that anger fuel, I call my anger box again, if I can control that, let out just enough to get done what I want to do, but put it back in there so that I'm not a raving lunatic like I was in my 20s, then you become more effective, especially in a sales situation, because you can let a little bit of that emotion out to pull people into your emotional world of this is why you need to do something, as opposed to being just a factual, regurgitator of stuff. So it was a process over time. As I like to say, Neil, success is a progression. It's a progression of ideas, executions, and learnings in life. Everybody goes from where they are to where they want to be if they learn and progress. And mine was just a slow progression. I lost a crap load of money and didn't succeed and had family issues, and my wife and I fought, and I wasn't around my kids enough. But I learned and I learned and I learned until we were, we hit it when I was 40. I made my first million at 40, multi-millions at 41, and then it just took off from there. But it was a learning process.
Yeah. I found that for me, the big initiator was kids. When I started having kids, that and what it was realizing that I couldn't switch off the anger for me.
Mm-hmm.
I just had to keep going, and I would go until I burned myself out, and I might take a week down and then come back and then keep going. And I just realized that there was sort of this separation between me and my relationships, because there was this anger that was sort of fueling everything. In fact, if I was to speak to the anger, and maybe you could say something about this, if I was to speak to the anger, what I'd really say is it was this aspect of not being good enough. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I am what they say I am, or what I
It was
was going to
fear.
be. Right.
It was your
Yeah.
fear. Right.
Yeah.
So mine didn't change ultimately until I met my first mentor. And if I could go back and tell myself, my 20-year-old self, something today, I would say find a mentor, find a coach, and listen to what they say. Because it took me 15 years to do that, 15, 18 years.
Yeah.
And as I like to say, back in the day, in my 20s and early 30s, I was hell on wheels, man. And everything was my way. And it wasn't that I call it ego, but it's really fear-driven ego, because I was afraid
Yes.
if I didn't do it exactly the way I thought it needed to get done, it was going to fail. The funny
Right.
thing was it kept failing over and over, even though I was making all the decisions. So it was when I found my first mentor, my first coach, my first business partner, just passed away recently, and watched how he worked and how he managed and how he built a business. And he was uber successful. I like to joke he was worth 20 million when I was worth $20. And I kept back to, oh my gosh, that is working. What I'm doing isn't working. And so again, you start this slow process, but that is the fear you're talking about of failure that drives that anger that pushes you to be hell on wheels around anybody and everybody that's associated with you. And that was me.
This question about mentorship is one that comes up all the time, and I hear people ask, how do I find a mentor,
Love it.
especially in a world where you can go on Instagram and everybody's a mentor, a
A
life
certified
coach, a
coach.
certified coach, right? A motivational speaker, and all of these things. It has become really difficult for people to be able to discern. They just feel like they're getting another sales job. How do they
Yep.
really understand or identify?
Love this question. And the answer is you have to. So first thing I want you to understand is the difference between you and today and you 5 years from now. We took back to that, where you are to where you want to be. The difference between you today and where you want to be is whatever you're going to put into your brain in that period of time, right? It's the books you're going to read. It's the podcast you're going to listen to. It's the mentors or coach that you're going to bring in and introduce your life to. So if the most important thing about the difference between where you are and where you want to be is information going into your brain, then you need to be very, very careful about who you allow access to your brain, who you allow to put information in there, who you're going to listen to.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
key is you need to vet that person very, very hard before you allow them, before you give them access into your world, right? So if I'm building a business, then I need to know, what have you done? And I don't want to hear about your 20-hour course that you took on Google, and you paid $159 and got a certificate. I got one of those too. I got it for $49 actually. I had my assistant answer 10 questions. I'm a certified life coach. Okay.
Oh,
That,
congratulations.
that's not going to help anybody. Right.
Right.
So if I'm looking for a business coach, I want somebody who is 10 to 20 steps ahead of me. And by the way, that does not mean Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, or any of the rest of these billionaires, because they're so far removed from what you do and the decisions you make, they cannot help you. Reading Elon Musk's latest book is not going to help you. Okay.
Right.
Find somebody who has built a business in your arena environment successfully, who can look at you and say, hey, Neil, I know you're building this business, but let me tell you something. I already made that mistake. I made that mistake and this is what happened. And I made that mistake and this is what happened. This is the way I would suggest you do it, because that's what I did and it worked. Find that person 10 to 20 steps ahead of you that's got proven results, and then bring them in and allow them to teach you, and then check your ego and listen to what they say. So it's all about vetting,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let me ask this now. What are some of the secrets that you think are out there? Actually, no, let's come to the secrets after. Let's get to some of the questions that people don't ask or don't even know to ask when they're trying to do this, because I think a
Sure.
lot of people get wrapped up into this idea of, how do I make money? And I know you've talked about the difference between time and between time and money, which and having your freedom, and everyone gets wrapped up into making money, and they end up just creating another job for themselves, and
Right.
they don't really have that freedom. So what are some of the questions that people need to ask and don't even know they need to ask when they're trying to build?
Sure. If you're launching, or if you're scaling, or if you have a business that's not scaling or not succeeding at the level
Yeah.
you want it to, I call this the 5 keys to success. They are the same 5 keys to failure. I wrote this article for Forbes magazine, and they changed the title, which kills me, but it's the same article, right? So if you're in this, I want to build a business, or I'm starting to build a business, or I have a business that's not growing the way I want it to, or not scaling, or is profitable. So here's my 5 keys. I'll try to make these quick. Number 1, why are you doing this? Why are you in business? Okay. Because I need to know that your why is so strong that when all the crap comes, you're not just going to bail on me. Okay. Because the crap will come and you will want to quit, and it will cost you money, and you will have problems, and your why needs to be super, super strong to get around that. So that's my very first one about starting a business. The second one is, and this is a big one, I find a lot of people, Neil, start businesses that think that they are an entrepreneur or a CEO, and they are not. Okay. And my simplistic way of saying this is Joe the plumber. So I use Joe the plumber in my books. And Joe's a plumber. He works for a plumbing company, and he's been doing this for 10 years. And the plumbing company is billing him out at 150 an hour, and they're paying him 50. And Joe, after 15 years, is going, why am I only making 50? I should make 150, because that's what they're charging. So Joe quits and starts Joe's Plumbing. Okay.
Yeah.
Joe's a technician. Joe's not a business owner, right? Joe now has a business. And if Joe's plumbing fails, ultimately, it will not be because Joe doesn't understand the technicalities of being a plumber. It will not be
Right.
because Joe doesn't know how to plumb. It will be because Joe doesn't know how to run a business. And knowing how to run a business is the key to success in any business. It's never about the technical stuff. It's never about the hard skills. I mean, yes, you have to have the hard skills, but it's always, always, always going to be about the soft skills and understanding how to run a business. So if you're starting a business, or if you're running a business and it's not doing what you want, you need to ask, who really are you inside your business? And who are you not? Are you the entrepreneur or the CEO? By the way, that's a manager. That's just a management position. CEO. Are you a salesperson, or are you a technician? Entrepreneur, manager, salesperson, technician. Most businesses are started by technicians. Technicians are not CEOs, and they are not entrepreneurs. It doesn't mean you shouldn't start the business, What it means is you need to understand and accept who you are in the business and then backfill the other roles with somebody else who understands how to do those things, right? Who understands payroll, who
Yeah.
understands insurance, who understands where the posters are supposed to be hung, who understands how the hiring process works, all the management crap. That's the manager. If you're trying to be a manager and you're a technician, you're going to fail. Okay. So understand
Yeah.
who you are and who you're not is critical to being successful in your business. The next one is, why should anybody buy your product? And why should they buy it from you? If you're selling a commodity that they can buy anywhere up and down the street from anybody else, you better come up with a unique offering that will make people want to buy your product and they will want to buy it from you. Because if you're just another commodity, then you're going to compete on price. That's a losing game until it falls to zero. Nobody makes any money. You better have a unique offering. That's a big one. Here's the other one. If you never successfully run a business, I got a secret for you. You don't know what you're doing. Okay? You don't know what you're doing. You do not have the experience to make the correct decisions within that business from a business perspective on how to succeed and how to fail. This is where it is so important and critical for you to bring in that coach or mentor that is 20 steps ahead of you. They can say, you're making a mistake here, here, and here. I do coaching and people call me and I'm like, I had one today. He said, I'm thinking about buying a small apartment complex in Columbus, Georgia. He's in Atlanta. I said, first of all, you don't know anything about apartment complexes. Second, it's in Columbus, Georgia, which is a 4.5-hour drive. What happens if the wheels come off the bus and you got to drive down there this is just a bad decision, right? You're not prepared to do this. But people online, they do. And I'm like, yeah, but they have resources and they have organizations and they have staff and they know what they're doing. You don't.
Yeah.
So you are not ready to go into that environment. But he just saw something online and thought, well, that's a great idea. They make money in an apartment. I'm going to go buy one in Columbus, Georgia, because, it's a good deal. And I'm going to get a hard money lender and he's only going to charge me 87%. And he's going to charge me, they just don't know.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's right.
You don't know what you're doing. Find somebody who does and have them help you. So, and then of course, understanding your numbers, you need to be able to do a P&L analysis really, really well to succeed. So these are my 5 things. I think I got all 5 of them in there, but if you don't do those things, those are the 5 keys to failure. If you do them, they're the 5 keys to success.
5 keys to failure and to success. Wow. What's interesting about that is I know that we could choose any one of those and we could spend the rest of our time just on any one of those items. And you can.
And you really need them all to succeed. That's the key.
Right. And I think the reality is where you start at, those will all change. Like your why might even change along the way. I know mine has changed over time, right? And who you are
and who you're not. So most people that start a business have to be everything, right? Because I don't have money to go out and hire 5, executives.
That's right.
But
that's right.
This is what I will tell you. Listen to me. As you begin to make money, don't spend it. You need to live the minimal lifestyle you can live while you're building this business and take every single extra dollar you've got and invest it in replacing you or delegating you within the organization. So we say the first thing you bring in is an admin person. The second thing you bring in is a marketing person. The third thing you bring in is a salesperson. And the fourth thing you bring in is an executive. You need to invest in assets, assets within your business instead of raising your lifestyle. That was one of the mistakes I made in my first business. I started making some money. I'm like, well, crap, I bought a Mercedes and a motorcycle and I bought a bigger house. And then when we had a blip in the company and the wheels came off the bus, I couldn't afford any of those things anymore because I hadn't set any money aside. I didn't have anybody else in the organization and the entire business collapsed on me. Right.
Where if you take a vacation and things aren't happening.
Yeah. And so, you might need to be all those things, who you are and who you're not, but at least recognize who you're not. And when you get a few extra bucks, bring that person in. You will be amazed at the speed at which you can scale your business if you will follow that simple thing.
Yeah. What's the most important piece of advice you've ever received over the years?
Quit taking your own damn advice.
You got to tell us more about that. Okay, so
This goes back to what I just said a minute ago, right? If you are not at where you want to be in life, if your
Yes.
business isn't growing the way you want it to grow, if you're not as profitable as you need to be, it's because you don't know what you're doing. And you are
Yeah.
probably currently taking your own advice in how to do those things. And guess
Right.
what? It's not working. So
Right.
what you need to do, this is, look, we call this the entrepreneur's 30-degree blinders. I'm building my business. I've got these 30-degree blind. This is what I see right in front of me, right? I'm looking at my problems. I'm looking at what's going on. A coach can come in
Yeah.
unbiased, unemotional, and bring a 180-degree view of everything that's going on around you on top
Yeah.
of their experience, right?
Yeah.
So you're so locked into your 30-degree view and you're taking all your own advice and your advice isn't working. Quit taking your own damn advice and bring somebody else in who's been there, done that can help you.
Yeah. Okay. Um, this is a lot of areas to go into there. I love that. I think one of the challenges for a lot of people, I was speaking at a real estate conference back in May with Grant Cardone
Oh,
was there, and um, one of the things that I was trying to address, because people are asking questions about rejection and how do I find investors? In this industry, you're getting a lot of these kinds of questions, and I was trying to explain to people that there is something about being responsible for your communication,
mhm,
and that is understanding that how you communicate currently and versus the people that you're trying to speak to,
mhm,
and understanding what they're hearing.
mhm.
And I find that a lot of people, especially when people are starting out, whether it's in business, whether it's real estate investing, these kind of things, they start out, they just want to make money,
Mhm.
and but nobody wants to invest with me, nobody wants to do
It's because
this.
you don't know what
And
you're doing.
yeah. And it just occurs to them as rejection. And
Mhm,
I was trying to explain to them. I said, look, I don't really believe in rejection, just like I don't really believe in motivation,
mhm.
because to me there's a commitment. I have a commitment, and I get all the motivation I want once I know what my commitment is in an area. And I don't believe in rejection, because if I understand how I'm communicating and what that person is hearing, then I know where the mismatch is.
Because you learn from it, right? It's not
Yeah.
rejection, it's a
Yeah.
learning experience. This is
Yeah.
exactly what I'm saying. If these
Yeah.
people have that rejection and don't learn why the rejection came, then they're
Yes.
gonna have the same problem. Failure leads to failure leads to failure. You gotta learn
Yes.
so you don't do the same thing the next time.
And so we come back to learn from your failure,
Yes.
right? As you started off with. Absolutely.
And by the way,
Uh,
let me say this about coaching and
yeah.
mentoring because I want to
Yeah.
throw this in. So there's two things about coaching and mentoring you need to remember. First of
Yeah.
all, coaches are generally for a reason and are
Yes.
for a season. Okay.
Yes.
So when I say
Yes.
that, I mean that there are three types of coaches, and these are the reason. There is a technical coach. A technical coach might
Yes.
be you to teach somebody how to buy apartment complexes. I don't have a friggin' clue how to do that. Okay. That's a technical coach. There is a
Right.
tactical coach, which is me. I am business. Give me your P&Ls. Let me see your sales organization. Show me your scripts. Show me your product. I will make your company more money. That's a tactical coach.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to tell you how to build or sell, your apartment complex because that's technical. And then there's
Right.
relational. Relational coaches are what's going on in your head, how you doing with your employees, how's everybody reacting, what's your, there's technical, tactical, and relational. So
Hmm.
coaches are for a reason. Is for one of those three. And by the way, I have two coaches. I have a tactical and tactical and a relational coach. Most coaches have coaches, by the way. There's a tip for you. The other one is coaches are for a season, right? And I will tell you that from a coaching perspective, from tactical, my target audience member is a well-funded startup through about $10 million in revenue. I say that because I've done that multiple times. Once you start blowing into the 20, 30 million revenue and you need to go to, whatever, that's not me. You need to go talk to Alex Hermosi, or you need to go talk to Brad Lee, or you need to, somebody who's
Yeah.
built multiple $100 million companies, not
Yes.
me. But I'll take you from 0 to 10 pretty easily. So a reason, tactical, technical, and relational, and a season, When you
Yes.
outgrow your coach or mentor, or you've come to the level that they can coach you, you need to move on to the next one.
Yes. Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. And I would even say, guys, if you're listening right now and you're feeling stuck, it's probably because it's time for that next season, finding that coach for your next season,
Yep.
finding that mentor for the next season, that's able to point out, because what is that issue that we have when we're stuck, right? Is, where do I go next? What am I
Mm-hmm.
supposed to do? And we just sit there with it, not knowing what that next step is, where that coach would be able to sit there and very quickly say, okay, here's where you need to move from here.
I love this. You know, Dave Meltzer. Dave Meltzer
Yes.
is a personal coach to 2 of the Fortune 50 companies in the U.S. Dave has coaches. He has a
Yes.
sleep coach. A sleep coach. Like, that's how specific he gets in his coaching. He's had the same sleep coach for, I don't know, 10 years, I think, or 15. I can't remember. This is just someone that teaches him how to sleep better. I mean, we're getting into some really specific coaching here,
Yeah.
but that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Right. Right. Wow. Okay. So the, I'm I love how you're continually bringing it back to coaching, and I think that for right now, guys, as you're listening, I hope that you're hearing this over and over again, that Brian keeps sharing with us. If you're stuck in a place, you've got to reevaluate, uh, your reason and the season. And you've got to be able to keep looking back to, are you learning from your failures? And I think that a coach would literally even be able to point you back in that direction. Let me ask you a little bit of different question then, Brian.
Sure.
You're out there, you're teaching people, you're writing books, you're flying airplanes, your own airplane, you're doing all this stuff. What's your greatest pain point right now? Whoa,
So yeah,
that
that
was
was a
a
big
deep
sigh.
breath right
All
there.
right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you a quick story. So
Hit us.
You know who Richard Branson is.
Yes.
So he owns an island in the British Virgin Islands. For people who don't know, he's a
Yeah.
multi-billionaire. He owns a place called Necker Island. It's his personal home, and he also hosts groups in all year long. And
Yes.
so I was just there in July with a group,
Yeah.
and it's like
Yeah,
it's
guys, you can go check out Brian's Instagram. He's got some video from there, on out
yeah.
on the water. So
I got to hang out and go kite surfing with Richard and had lunch
yeah,
and breakfast and dinners and just
yeah,
when you get to spend some time with somebody who's, first of all, worth $3 billion, that's cool. Second of all, he lives in paradise. Third, he has an entire staff that attends to his every whim and need, which is like cool. We went over to Anegada Island. It's 12 miles. We took the boat. He kite surfed. Like, he's 73 years old and he's kite surfing while we're on the boat. Talk about feeling bad about yourself. So Richard owns like 100 companies today still. And he works with anything from micro lenders in Indonesia to entrepreneur organizations helping people start up, to venture capital, private equity, to cruise lines, all this stuff Richard does. And I said, Richard, we're sitting in the temple one night. There's a place on his island called the Temple where the elders of the world meet. That's another crazy story. And I said, Richard, you're 73. It was his birthday. I said, what in the world drives you to keep going? I mean, why are you still doing? I mean, why are you hanging out with us? I mean, we were 14 entrepreneurs from all over the world, but we're just like, Joe average guys. Why are you spending so much time hanging out with us for this 5-day period? And why do you do what you do? And he said, Brian, let me tell you something. If you have a talent or an ability, and that talent or ability can be how to run a business, how to make money, and you can take that talent and ability and you can use it to help people and to make the world a better place, then you have an obligation as a human being to give back to the world some of what the world gave you the opportunity to have. Wow. I mean, that was just like a mic drop
yeah,
moment for me. And I thought, that is really, because I sold my companies 15 years ago, and I've done a lot of things. Those are the big sales, big VC, PE sales. And sometimes you get comfortable because you've got money and an airplane and cars and boats and all this crazy stuff. And Then you see a guy who's worth, 100 times what you are saying, what are you, selfish? I mean, what are you doing over here? And I was like, wow, that's a mic drop for me. So I really refocused on, and that's part of my coaching program, but I really refocused on trying to go out and work with and help people become better at what they do, and help them change their lives. Like my life was changed when my mentor came in and helped me. Like that changed my generational picture wealth wise for my family forever. So if I have a pain point today, it's that I'm not, this is going to sound weird, I am not doing as much as I could to give back to the world, even based on the little amount of success I've had. And it's nowhere near a Richard Branson thing. It's not even close, but I'm not doing enough. When I meet someone like Richard, I'm like, I am not doing enough. I need to step my game up. So my
Yeah.
pain point is I'm not doing enough. And I have a little laziness factor in me that I fight, because sometimes you don't have to. So you really got to,
Right.
you make a decision and you go do. So that's kind of my pain point.
Wow. I was in a meeting yesterday. One of the things that I'm working on is an expansion into the U.S. in real estate, and I was speaking with the gentleman yesterday via Zoom, and he didn't know some of my background, so he's asking, and then he said, "Well, if you've already got this business and you're already doing this." Private lending, hard money lending, this kind
Mm-hmm.
of, you already got this business, you're already doing that, you've got investors, why would you do this?
Yeah.
And I kind of looked at him and I was a little shocked. I was a little upset. I was like, the chapter's not my book is not done.
Yeah.
What do you mean? And I actually got a little dejected because I thought, is this what we deal with? Is this what there is, right? Like somehow you've gotten some success in an area according to this person, so
Mm-hmm.
therefore you should just, and so what you just shared, I love that because it's a different way to even look at the world. Everything doesn't have to be just about you per se, and it can really be about your contribution
The
to the
person you were
world,
talking
right?
to was only concerned with money, and that's a very
Right.
limited belief in the way you run your life. Like to say, if when you die, what do you want him to put on your tombstone? He made a lot of
Yeah.
money, or he helped a lot of people.
Yeah.
And you can make a lot of
Yeah.
money helping people, by the way. Don't, and Richard was very
Yes.
pointed. He was
Yes.
pointed about that. He goes, "Now, don't get me
Yes.
wrong. You can make
Yeah.
a lot of money helping people, but
Yes.
it's a duality of what you're trying to accomplish here." So,
Yeah.
yeah, my old partner
Oh,
told me when he used to give money to people all the time, I'd say, "Steve, why are you giving money to these people? All they do is
right.
take advantage of you." And my partner at the time said, "Look, if they put on my gravestone, I gave away money and people took advantage of me, but I tried to help, then I've lived a good life."
Yeah.
Like, okay, I
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah. I I'm inspired by what you were sharing there. I was actually worried I was going to cry. It was so beautiful. Like it is it is beautiful when you can hear someone that taps into that essence of, I want to give back, especially for me, being young, and the greatest, highest position I could imagine at one point was being a drug dealer. They had, in the world of mentors, I was like, oh, okay, if I got there, that would be pretty amazing, right?
Hmm.
And again, different time in history, all of those kind of things, right? And where I grew up, what I went through,
Yeah.
and so part of this is the opportunity to share with people, and I love that you're sharing this realness with people, that you can make money, and you can be this contributing force, this force of nature for the world, and that can
And it's
really
funny.
drive you to keep going.
It's funny how many times it comes at you. I had another mentor. His name's Paul Pilzer. He lives out in Park City. After I'd sold
Yeah.
my companies years ago, I was sitting at lunch with him and he goes, "Brian, what are you going to do now?" I said, "I don't know. I guess I'll start another company." And Paul goes, "Why? Do you need the money?" And I said, "No." He said, "Why?" I said, "I don't know what else to do. I've been head down, dark to dark for 20 years. I don't know what else to do." And he asked me this question. He goes, "What's your passion?" And I said, "My what?" I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't talk about passion. I make money. That's what I do. And he said, "Brian, let me tell you something. I'll tell you right now. If you're ever going to be truly happy in life, you're going to have to do two things. Number one, find a passion, monetary or not. And number two, figure out a way to give back. When you can do those two things, you'll be happy. If you don't, you're going to just chase money till you die."
Yeah. Yeah. you get into the habit of doing certain things, and so you just keep doing them over and over again, right? Now, actually, this is a great question, and maybe this for me. I'm turning 50 next year, and
Youngin.
I said, "Yeah, that's right. I'm a youngin."
58.
And I actually, I just went out and bought a motorcycle, and I said, I'm going to learn how to ride a motorcycle by the time I'm 50. So I just got one 30 days ago, learning. I've already broken it. It's in the shop right now. Yeah. Yes, it's true.
Dropped his bike already.
I've already dropped the bike. Yeah. And, but I think I may have actually found a hobby. And I was sharing this with some of my partners, some of my friends, because I said, that balance has really not been there. And so I was like, oh, this is exciting. Now, I don't know if it's just because there's another something to get good at.
Little adrenaline.
Because I don't really, I've gotten it up to a certain speed, but I've not gone that fast. And I'm already like, I don't know if I like this. This is a little fast for me now. But what I will say is that I recognize through this process that there is something there about once you start to get good at something, you just want to keep sort of staying there. And sometimes you don't know how to break out. And I think you just hit that on the head. You went from one and I'm going to go do this again. And can you say something about that? Something about how to reframe?
Yeah. So what you're chasing is that adrenaline rush of winning, right?
Yes.
So I like to think that entrepreneurs are warriors. We're like the Vikings of old times, right? We want to go conquer. We want to go win. We want to go be the best. We want to stand with our flag on top of the mountain and say, I did this. I won. Right. So when you achieve something
that I'm scheduling to climb a mountain next year.
Which one?
Mount Chimborazo in Ecuador.
Interesting.
Yeah, apparently the highest mountain, or furthest you can get away from the center of the earth.
Wow.
And it requires no real equipment.
I did Mount Fuji with my kids in Japan. It's the tallest point in Japan. But I've done a couple of the 14ers. But my point was, we are warriors. That's what we want to conquer, right? And that conquer gives us adrenaline, and it gives us emotion, and it makes us feel powerful. So when you're doing something successful, that gives you that adrenaline power rush. And so you want to do it again. You know, it's like it's like women. You want to do it again. It's cool. It's awesome.
Yeah.
That probably wasn't good. You might want to cut that out of the video.
Yeah. Well, I'm married,
what it
so
is.
My wife knows what that means.
It's chasing that rush of winning.
Right.
And that's why we do the same thing over and over, because it's just another rush. And I know I'm going to win at this because I know I'm good at it. So I know I get the rush. So that's what I do.
Yeah. Yeah. There is definitely something there about just living your life. And this idea of a lot of people live their life in someday I'll do this, someday I'll do that. This buying a motorcycle, and like, do you know how to ride? And I was like, no. Why would you buy a motorcycle? Because I'm going to learn. Get a motorcycle, go get right. You're going to figure it out. It's something to do, and maybe I'll like it, and maybe I won't like it.
Yeah.
Who knows? I can move on to the next thing, but so many people live in this someday of life. And
I call it chasing life's passions, Neil. When I sold those companies years ago, I took a few years and I went out and did, as I like to say, all those things everybody says they're going to do someday and they never actually do. So I became a pilot, and I became a dive master, and I walked the Great Wall of China, and I dove with great white sharks. And, I just did all these things. People say I've traveled the world and had fun and ran with the bulls in Spain and chase life's passions. I had the fortunate opportunity to do those things, and I went and did it. And they were all an individual rush when I did them, just like your motorcycle.
I love it. Yes. One of the items that I'm looking at is just putting these things onto next year is going to be this, the year after, just start putting them on.
Yep.
plan them out, right? And whoever wants to come, you want to go
Love
climb
it.
Mount Chimborazo, come on, reach out
Love
to
it.
me.
Love it. Love it. Love it.
I love it. And just as we're coming
Hey,
up to
Neil,
the
yeah, I was just gonna let you know we're on the 10-minute mark.
Yeah. Okay, great. Just Brian, just as we're coming up here, we're getting ready to close out. What is it that sort of inspires you these days that I know that you shared about giving more.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you're looking at this next leg and you're like, this is what I want to what is boiling that adrenaline in you right now that you're driving forward?
It's interesting. And I don't know if I've quite figured out this level, but like I had Dave Meltzer on my podcast, and
Yes.
his goal is to help 1 billion people be happy. Like who thinks like that? Dave does. I work with another entrepreneur, Jason Duncan, and his is to help 100,000 business owners scale their operations to where they're only working 10 hours a week inside their business. That's a huge goal. I hear these goals and I'm thinking, I just like watching somebody's eyes light up when we show them how to make their business better, or they get that first big check, or things become profitable and they can buy a new car and a house. That turns me on. I think maybe I'm not thinking big enough in that realm. I'm not talking hundreds of thousands or billions of people. I'm still focused on the 1 and the 2. So
Yeah.
I need to get a bigger goal, I guess.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that when Grant Cardone was speaking back in May, and I was listening to him and talked about a lot of different things, and Grant loves a good rant. But one of the things that I heard him say was he wants to get 7 billion people to know his name. That's his goal.
That's
right.
That's big thinking.
And how that hit me was I sat there and thought, well, if that's where he's thinking, I think I need to, take some of that on, and maybe it's not 7 billion for me yet. Maybe it's, hey, what if 500,000, a million, actually a million. I think I like the idea of a million. Maybe I can create that as my commitment.
Yes.
To get 1 million people to know my name, and that was one of the things that I loved out of hearing him speak, and
By the
one
way,
of the things that I was looking forward to hearing.
What you're talking about is a progression, right? I talk about this in my goal setting stuff. Goal setting business is always a progression. Grant Cardone did not start out wanting to have 7 billion people know his name.
Yes.
That's not where he started. That's where he is today.
Yes.
So you as a startup should not be thinking about 7 billion people knowing your name.
Yes.
Focus on building your first business. Then focus on the next level and the next level. And those will come, and we can reverse engineer whatever big goal that you think you want. But you can't start off today saying, I'm going to be a billionaire next week, because that's not going to happen. I don't care. You can't even win the lottery and be a billionaire next week. Right.
Yeah.
So have big goals, reverse engineer them, but start with something that's achievable, and let's start achieving. Boom, 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 boom. And you will eventually get there. This is why I talk about taking the advice of billionaires sometimes is tough, because they're thinking so big. I want 7 billion people to know my name. Yeah, but Grant, that's not where you started.
Yes.
You started wanting to buy a fourplex, and then you went to, and then today you're buying billions of dollars worth of stuff, and it's phenomenal. And you can get there. Anybody can get there as long as you build it properly.
Yeah. If you were to start a business today, $50,000 to your name, what would you start?
This is an interesting question. I heard this on another one of your episodes, and I'm not sure $50,000 is enough money to really make a big long-term wealth investment. So I would find a business I could start and build that I could make money at, and begin building towards that. Again, we're back to progression, right?
Yeah.
So I had another person say, well, I've got $10,000 to invest. I said, well, don't invest it. Okay.
Yes.
That's not enough money. It's not going to make a dent. And you're probably going to lose it. When I heard somebody else on your podcast say the same thing, you're probably going to lose it, right? Because you're new in business. You don't know what you're doing. Let's get a business going that you can start making money and progressing and get bigger and bigger and bigger, putting away more and more money. Then we'll talk, when you've got enough, we'll talk about investing and doing all kinds of cool things and buying huge assets. But you got to get that ball rolling. You got to be able to start getting a positive cash flow at a high level, so that you can then have enough money to start doing really, really cool things. If I had 50 grand today, I'd probably start a business. I don't know what it would be. I've done so many businesses at this point. I would say the easiest way to make money is probably something internet related.
Right.
Not sure what that would be. I mean, I own millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of real estate. It's all
Yeah.
paid for, but that's because I took money out of the businesses I built and I paid cash for all the real estate that I own, which generates hundreds
Yes.
and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of passive income.
Yes.
I didn't start with $5 million of real estate.
Right. Right. Chain of restaurants. Why restaurants?
I used to take all my employees out for happy hour like 3 or 4 times a week. And when we sold the company, somebody joked that I should buy the restaurant that I was sitting in. So I did. I lost money. So I sold it and bought 4 more because I'm not a quitter. So the next 4 made money. And then I thought I was a genius in the restaurant business. So I built 2 more and they failed. And then I thought I'm not a genius in the restaurant business, but let's go buy a couple more. And so I've been on this weird path of buying and selling. I've had 15 now, and I've currently got 4 that are very successful. So I've learned and lost and learned and lost and learned and lost until I've got 4 that generate 7 figures of profit. They do really, really well. So
are you able to tell us what restaurants those are?
Central City Tavern, which is they've got 3 of those in Atlanta, another one called the Derby, which has been around for like 40 years. I have one called Cantina, but I just sold it. It closes week after next. It was a Mexican concept.
Yeah. So guys, if you're in Atlanta or from Atlanta, you've got some places to go visit. Now you're not going to find Brian there because he just finished telling us that, you've got to hire the assets to be able to run the business.
I got a good team. I don't know how to cook. I don't know how to make drinks. I don't know how to do anything. The restaurant people don't call me when they have a problem because they know I'm useless.
Yeah. Brian, what did we miss before we let you go? What do we need to ask or answer before we go?
I'll leave the story. I live with a lot of podcasts. Apple Computer, one of the largest companies in the world, run by a guy named Tim Cook. Tim Cook's got to be a freaking genius, right? Billions and billions, $1 trillion worth of value, billions and billions in profit. Yeah. Tim Cook has a board of directors. He has 12 people that roll in every quarter that sit down with him. And he says, hey guys, here's my problems. I got problems with Foxconn. I got problems with this. I got problems with that. Give me some advice. And they give him advice. And then they all finish their board meeting and they go, and Tim Cook takes all these people's help and all their answers to his questions. And he goes and he helps run Apple. Tim Cook also has a personal coach that works with him on the personal side, which is his personal relationships, his business relationships, and whatnot. If Tim Cook needs 12 people and a personal coach to help him run his business, what in the world makes you as an individual entrepreneur think you don't need anybody?
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Guys, I hope you have gotten a ton of value from Brian today. If you haven't, go back and listen to the episode again. And if you need more, do it again and again. Brian, lots of great stuff. Where's the best place for people to get a hold of you?
Yep, brianwillmedia.com. brianwillmedia.com. My podcasts, my books, my blogs, my newsletters, everything's on my website. Easiest way to get a hold of me.
Love it, and we'll put that in the show notes. And we won't ask you about Donald Trump or the pending elections or that kind of stuff. I've enjoyed some of your content from Instagram, the thoughts you've shared in a number of different areas. But so guys, go check him out on Instagram as well. But Brian, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Neil, this was awesome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, guys, that's another episode of the Leadership to Wealth podcast, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.